You pull up to the inspection station, hand over your keys, feeling pretty confident, and 20 minutes later, the inspector hands you a massive failure report that is going to cost you thousands of dollars to fix. It is a gut-sinking feeling, but the truth is, almost every single reason a car fails its annual safety and emissions inspection is something you could have caught right in your own driveway with zero special tools. Today we are going through exactly what inspectors are looking for, how they test it, and how you can save yourself a massive headache. Inspectors do not mess around when it comes to the braking system. It is the single most critical safety component on your vehicle, and they show zero tolerance here. If your brake pad thickness drops below 1/16 of an inch, you are failing immediately. But they are not just looking at the pads. They are looking for deep grooves in your brake rotors, excessive flaking rust on the rotor edges, or rotors that have been machined down past their minimum safe thickness. You can actually check a lot of this yourself. Just look through the spokes of your wheels. If the friction material on the brake pad looks thinner than the metal backing plate it is attached to, you are in the danger zone. Sometimes the brake pad on the outside looks perfectly thick, but the slide pins in the brake caliper have seized up due to a lack of lubrication. This causes the inside pad to drag against the rotor and wear down to the bare metal, while the outside pad looks brand new. The inspector will catch this uneven wear. They are also going to physically put your car on a brake testing stand or use a decelerometer to make sure all four wheels are braking evenly and with enough force. If you have been feeling a vibration in the steering wheel when you step on the pedal, or if you hear a metallic grinding sound, that means you have warped rotors or metal-on-metal contact. They will also check your parking brake to ensure it can hold the car stationary under a load. Do not forget the brake lines either. A rusted-out steel brake line that looks like it is about to burst under pressure is an automatic fail, and so is degraded brake fluid that has absorbed too much moisture. Next up is your rubber. All the braking power in the world means absolutely nothing if your tires cannot grip the pavement. The absolute legal minimum tread depth is 2/32 of an inch. If you are below that, do not even bother showing up to the inspection bay. You can check this right now with a Lincoln penny. Stick the penny into the tread groove with Lincoln's head pointing down. If you can see the top of his head, your tread is dangerously low and it is time for new tires. When your tread drops below 2/32, the deep channels that evacuate water are basically gone. At 60 miles per hour on a wet highway, your tire literally lifts off the pavement and rides on a microscopic layer of water, a terrifying phenomenon called hydroplaning. For safe driving, especially in the rain, you really want at least 4/32 of an inch. And for winter tires, you want a minimum of 5/32. Inspectors are also hunting for structural damage. Any cracks in the sidewall, bubbling, or deformations mean the internal belts of the tire are failing and it is a blowout waiting to happen. That is an instant fail. They also look closely at the DOT manufacturing date code on the sidewall. If your tires are over 10 years old, even if they have perfect tread, many inspectors will fail them for dry rot and rubber degradation. And here is a pro tip. Turn your steering wheel all the way to one side and check the very inner edge of your front tires. A lot of cars have bad alignment that destroys the inner shoulder of the tire while the outside looks perfectly fine. The inspector will definitely check that inner edge. Before we dive into the nasty mechanical stuff underneath the car that gets a lot of people caught off guard, if you want to keep your ride running smoothly and avoid these expensive shop visits, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let us talk about what is holding those wheels to the car. Your steering and suspension systems are going to be heavily scrutinized. When the inspector turns your steering wheel slightly from left to right, the wheels should respond instantly. If there is a ton of dead play in the steering wheel, that means you have worn out tie rod ends, bad ball joints, or a completely shot steering rack. You can test this at home by jacking up the front end, grabbing the tire at the 9 and 3 o'clock positions, and giving it a shake. If it clunks, you have a problem. They are also going to inspect your shock absorbers and struts. If they see oil leaking out of the shock tube, or if the car bounces like a boat on the ocean when they push down on the fender, that is a failure. But one of the most common reasons people fail in this category is torn CV axle boots. Those rubber accordion-looking boots on your drive axles are packed with thick grease. When they tear, centrifugal force throws all that grease everywhere, usually all over the inside of your wheel and brake caliper. Once the grease is gone, dirt and water get into the CV joint, destroying it very quickly. A torn boot is an immediate rejection. If you hear a clicking noise when you make a tight turn in a parking lot, or your car wanders all over the highway, your suspension is trying to tell you something is wrong. Moving under the hood and beneath the engine, we have to talk about fluid leaks. Now, there is a big difference between a little bit of seepage and an active leak. If your engine or transmission has a light coating of greasy dirt because of an old valve cover gasket that has been sweating for 5 years, an inspector might just note it as a minor advisory. But if you have actual drops of oil, transmission fluid, or power steering fluid hitting the ground while the car is running, that is a major safety hazard and an environmental issue, and you will fail. A power steering rack that is blowing fluid out of the inner tie rod boots means the internal seals are completely blown, and you will lose power assist while cornering. A dripping rear main seal or a cracked oil pan needs to be fixed before you roll into the inspection station. The best way to prep for this is to park your car over a clean piece of cardboard overnight. If you see fresh, wet spots in the morning, you need to track down the source. Grab a can of brake parts cleaner, spray down the greasy areas, wipe it completely dry, and run the engine to see exactly where the fresh fluid is weeping from. While you are looking under the car for leaks, you need to evaluate the rust situation. Surface rust on your exhaust pipe or cast iron suspension components is totally normal, especially if you live in the Rust Belt where they salt the roads heavily in the winter. But structural rot is a completely different story. Inspectors are specifically targeting the load-bearing areas of your car. They are looking at the subframe, the rocker panels under the doors, the longitudinal frame rails, and the strut towers. If the metal is completely rusted through, leaving jagged holes, the structural integrity of the vehicle is compromised. In a crash, a rotted frame will just fold up instead of absorbing the impact the way it was designed to. Inspectors will often use a small hammer or a pry bar to tap on suspicious, bubbling rust spots. If their tool punches right through the metal, your car is getting a rejected sticker. If you have an older vehicle that has spent its life near the ocean or in snowy climates, you have to be vigilant about washing the undercarriage and applying rust inhibitors, because fixing structural rot usually requires expensive welding and fabrication. We are about to cover the most dreaded part of the inspection, the emissions and computer tests that cause the most headaches and drain the most wallets. But really quick, hit subscribe so you can keep learning how to outsmart these expensive repair bills. The absolute biggest reason cars fail today is the emissions test. During this part of the inspection, they are checking your tailpipe emissions and plugging into your car's OBD2 port to read the engine computer. Let me make this incredibly clear. If your check engine light is illuminated on the dashboard, it is an automatic, non-negotiable failure. You will not pass. Even if the light is off, the computer stores pending codes for things like failing oxygen sensors or a degrading catalytic converter. For gas cars, they are monitoring carbon monoxide and unburnt hydrocarbons. For diesel trucks, they are doing a snap acceleration test to measure the opacity of the black soot coming out of the exhaust. High emissions numbers usually point to a dirty mass airflow sensor that is throwing off your air-to-fuel ratio, clogged up fuel injectors, a vacuum leak, or an exhaust leak right before the O2 sensor. Do yourself a massive favor. Go to an auto parts store, buy a cheap $20 code reader, and plug it in before your inspection. If you have stored codes, you can diagnose and fix the issue on your own terms instead of being forced into a high-pressure repair at the testing facility. Now, speaking of the check engine light, here is a trick a lot of people try that absolutely never works. You have a check engine light for an evap system leak or a bad catalytic converter, so you pull into the parking lot of the inspection station, unhook the battery for 5 minutes, or use a cheap scanner to clear the code. The light goes off, and you think you beat the system. The inspector plugs their machine into your OBD2 port and immediately fails you. Why? Because of readiness monitors. When you clear the codes, you also wipe the internal readiness monitors in the engine computer. The computer basically says that it has not driven long enough to test its own emission systems yet. The inspection machine sees these monitors are incomplete and rejects the vehicle on the spot. To get those monitors to show as ready, you have to complete a specific drive cycle, which usually involves a very precise mix of cold starts, highway cruising at exactly 55 miles per hour for a certain distance, and stop-and-go city driving. If there is a real mechanical problem, the check engine light will just come right back on during that drive cycle. You cannot trick the computer. You have to actually fix the root cause of the code. Let us move on to something simple that people overlook all the time: lighting and electrical components. You would be shocked at how many people fail their inspection over a $2 light bulb. The inspector is going to check every single exterior light on the car. That means headlights, high beams, turn signals, hazard lights, reverse lights, and even the tiny bulbs illuminating your rear license plate. They also check the headlight aim. If your headlights are pointed straight up into the trees, blinding oncoming traffic, you will fail. They are going to step on the brake pedal and make sure all 3 brake lights illuminate, including the high-mount stoplight in your rear window. If the plastic lens over your tail light is cracked and showing white light shining directly to the rear, that is a violation. Also, honk your horn. It sounds ridiculous, but if your horn does not work because of a blown fuse or a broken clock spring in the steering wheel, your car is considered unsafe and will not pass. Do a full walk around of your car with a friend the night before your test and verify every single bulb and switch is doing its job. Passing your state inspection does not have to be a stressful, expensive nightmare. It just comes down to knowing your vehicle, doing a thorough visual check of your tires, brakes, suspension, and lights, and never ignoring what your check engine light is trying to tell you. Catching these things early in your driveway gives you the time to order the parts online and do the work yourself, rather than paying massive markups at a repair shop just to get your sticker. I want to hear what you guys are dealing with right now. Head down to the comments and tell me what year and model you are driving, what check engine codes are popping up, or what ridiculous thing caused you to fail an inspection in the past. Let us get a conversation going down there, and do not forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into keeping your ride on the road. See you in the next one.